This is Dave Bortner, Freedom Boat Service. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary in business, and we happened to run across these cassette tapes that were produced as part of the Antique Motor Boating Symposium, March 31st through April 2nd of 1995 at the Mariners Museum. We thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to digitize these presentations by icons and luminaries of our hobby. We hope you enjoy listening to them and join us in celebrating our 10 years in business. Thanks. The second file is about the Chris-Craft Cobra, 40 Fin-Tastic years, presented by our pal Terry Fiest, whom you all know from the Sunnyland show. Terry is also one of the preeminent experts in Cobras, and it's a really interesting talk about all the nuances of Cobras.
That's the actual numbers made. I know you've probably heard different stories about numbers and that sort of thing, but there were 108 boats totally made, 52 18-footers and 56 21-footers. There was a prototype made of each one. The prototypes were built in Algonac, and the productions were made in Cadillac. The first three models that you see there were actually the first two 18-foot models there. They were advertised, but they were never produced. So the only boats that were produced were the boats. When there's a mistake on my slide there, and I just seen it. That's not a KLE engine there. That's a KLC engine. But the 18-foot model had a total of 52. I'll keep that number there. 52 boats, and 6 of them had KLC engines in them, and the other 46 had the KBL engine in them. Then you jump down to the 21-foot models. They actually had 3 engine options. They had the MVL, and I think most of you know that's the engine that was in the racing runabout that started in 47, and last year for that was 54. So in 55, they kept the engine, and they advertised this as a new racing runabout series. So in theory, this was the Cobra actually took the place of the racing runabout, and the two out in the audience or out there in the lobby there, that's kind of indicative of a change in production. So that's how I like to remember this. The 21-footers, the prototype 21-footer had a Chrysler engine in it. As I've gone through all these numbers and studied them, I've concluded that I feel that the 21-foot Cobra with the Cadillac engine in it is probably the premier collectible boat because it's the fastest boat. It's got the powerful engine in it. The boat is much lighter because of the weight of the engine, so it's a lot faster. And I think that Cadillac engine in itself has a story behind it. And Gary has done a tremendous job on going back through the history of that Cadillac engine by Cal Cannell. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit today. But Gary's done a paper here, and it's in the archives or in the Chris-Craft Cobra file here that you're welcome to look at it. He lays it all out. So he's done a great job on that. So these are the options that were available. And I didn't put the engine options on here. I just wanted to show you how simple things were back in the 50s. That was all the options that were available that you could buy over and above. The parentheses there show the wholesale cost, so that's $27 for a cockpit cover and $20.25 is what it was wholesale. So, and these boats had a variety of options on them. My particular model out there actually had a cockpit cover on it. I didn't put it back on there for a reason, and that's because I didn't want to put the snaps on that gorgeous blonde king plank, and you have to put a snap across there, and I didn't want to do that, so I just didn't put it back on, but it actually came with one. This is where the boats went. This is, I think a lot of people want to know, where are they? Are they still out there? I can tell you we've accounted for about 81 with our Cobra Club. Out of the 108, you can figure out there how many are unaccounted for. They're still sitting out there. I believe that they're there. People do know that they're there. You just got to get in the right niche or stumble onto one accidentally. But that's a total of where the 18-footers went. The high count on there is California and New York. And the boats that went to New York were actually, some of them were shipped overseas, and I'll show you that on the 21-footers. But the boat that went to South Dakota, there's a story about that. I'll show you a picture of that here a little later. But that's actually been found, and somebody has that. And and I'll show you a photo of that. I'll talk about that when it comes up here. This is where the 21-footers went. None here in Virginia, but 12 went to New York, and checking the hull cards, those addresses there are all mostly overseas addresses except for a few. So I found that a lot of the 21-footers went overseas, and that's probably because of the racing series, and the boat was billed as a racer. So the next high state was California there with 11. These are a couple of the boats here that came with Chris-O-Matics in it. I know there's been a lot written about Chris-O-Matics, and they were actually in the Cobra. There was 4 in these 18-footers there. There's the hull numbers that I've listed, and number 8 is an unknown boat right now, but Wilbur lives out in California, and he runs his at Tahoe there, and he has a Chris-O-Matic in his. So these are 21-foot models with Chris-O-Matics. There was only 2. That only came on the MBL engine. Larry, if you don't know Larry Ginsberg, Larry is just a fantastic guy. He's a renowned boat collector. He's got some of the most beautiful boats ever made, and he has number 53. It has a Cadillac engine in it right now, but he has all the original equipment for it. And number 3 is the boat that belonged to Joe Cabot, and so Joe had that boat way back when. This is how it was advertised in the catalog. This is actually out of the 1955 catalog here, and it advertised both models there. They talk about the wraparound windshield and the flashy curves to it and all that. The 2 boats are very different. That 3 feet is really deceiving. It's mostly in the bow of the 21-footer, which enables it to travel a lot faster. The 18-foot is advertised as 3 people can sit in that, and the 21 seats 4. And for those of you that rode mine yesterday, you put 3 in an 18-footer, and it's a full load. So it's a fun boat, but it's very impractical. There's no room for anything except the person that's riding in it. If you get around a dock that's anywhere where the water is tidal, and you get on a low tide, you can't even get out of it because you're so low. You can't get up to the dock, and the boat has a tendency to be, with the fin on it, the wind will kind of drift it. It'll drift into a dock, and the docks will lead it up in a hurry. So you got to have kind of a floating dock to use it. I found this in the archives here as I was going through some of the data on the Cobra. This is actually the spec sheet that was set aside for the 18-footer, and this lays all the dimensions out for the lumber. It's a handwritten note just like that, and we just had a slide made out of it. What's really interesting on there, and I really haven't been able to figure it out, at the bottom, at the very bottom here, right here, it says 283, and it says 283, no, too much power. And that they're talking about a 283 Chevy small block V8. And if you look at the date up the top, it's well, the date isn't on there for some reason. It was on the paper, but I guess it didn't copy. But the date on that is November of '54. I didn't see that it wasn't on there. It's on my sheet here, but it just didn't print. But that sheet is written in November of 1954, and they're talking about a 283 Chevy, and a 283 never came out till '57. So I really don't know what that number means. And then down at the very bottom, it says gray 6, 112 is okay. So that's sort of the mystique that I found as you get into this. Where did the number 283 come from? Like I say, that didn't come along till '57. But all those numbers there for the strut and all that, that's the same numbers and everything that are right on the bottom of all the parts. This is an interesting article. This is a Popular Science magazine article from 1955. I got the magazine right here. I've just treasured this thing. I've had it for years. And this is the article in there from the boat show. It says 1955 boat show, and it talks about the Cobra and the introduction of it. And the author of this article was actually at Algonac, and this is the 21-foot prototype. I've been able to figure that out by just reading this and knowing the time that this article was done. It had to be the 21-foot prototype. And this is actually out in the St. Clair River, as you see it there. This picture right here, look at this picture right here, and that's the same picture. And I put this picture here next to this article, and it was taken at the very same time, and it would be the next sequence in there. And I actually found this picture in a flea market, and I was going through, I have an interest in cars, and I was looking through this flea market looking for pictures in cars, and I found this picture of this boat, and I bought it. I paid $10 for that picture, and I brought it home, and I've had it for years, and when I got to put this pitch together for here, I was looking at the picture, and I was looking at the article in here, and I just couldn't believe that it was the same photo. So that's an actual photo right there of the prototype running. When this man did this article on this boat, he took it out for a ride, and he talks about how fast it is. He comes back in, and he's back on land again with A.W. McKeer, the company production superintendent, explained that the Cobra got its hull design from 30 years of Chris-Craft boating evolution and its fuselage styling from the example of such Gold Cup racers as Slow Motion 4 and 5. The boat's slim hull with a shear to waterline measure, freeboard tapering from 26 inches at the bow to 11 at the transom has been taking shape as part of a development program since the mid-1920s, McKeer said. Ancestor of the Cobra is a sixth-place 21-footer launched last year, and the cross-section has similar broad upper hull stepped in sharply to a candle slim keel. Nevertheless, when pilots first flew the Cobra out of the Chris-Craft slip and onto the river, they didn't quite know what was coming because a few pretty radical changes had been made. Eventually found that long planing paid off in both speed and stability. Says McKeer, our boats must be both fast and safe. We could probably get faster performance if we disregarded the safety factor. Not much has been disregarded in this Goldfin Sportster, be it for pleasure boating or modification as a racer. The Cobra should be a slick boat in anybody's log, and that's from 1955. So I thought that was pretty interesting to be able to tie it all together like that. This is another article that I found in a magazine. This actually comes from a magazine called C Magazine here. It's dated 1980, and I've had this for a long time, and it took me a long time to realize that was my buddy Joe Cabot. So, and that's actually how I met Joe, was from this article. So this is from 1980. That's hull number 3 on the 20-footers. That's Joe there a few years ago. And there's the other, and I'll show you this article. I'll bring these magazines to lunch today, and you can all take a look at them at the table that I'll be sitting at. But this is the actual article in there, and that's a picture from 1980, like I told you. MBL engine, Chris-O-Matic. And to tell you how things sort of, somebody says something or somebody does something or puts something on a boat, and then you sort of take it for granted. I've seen flags on the stern light on the Cobras, and people say, well, I seen one time, with the flag on it, and I thought they went there. Well, see, Joe's got a flag on the stern light on there, and it's a nice touch, but it wasn't original, but, somebody's seen that, and then all of a sudden, somebody else has one. They say, well, I seen it on a boat, and that's how these things get going. So you kind of got to go back and find out, who, what was original and what isn't, and, of course, you get into a boat show with these boats, and all these little nitnoing things are what you lose points on. So anyway, this is a great article, and I'll share that with you at noon today. That's the same boat a few years later. This was in the archives here, and I found that, so I added this into the presentation. But that's Charlie Cross, a renowned Chris-Craft dealer, sitting on the seat up on the cowling there, and that's Charlie with I don't know who the man is that's waving, and Joe doesn't remember. He can't recall what his name is. So if anybody can identify that guy, we'd sure like to know who it is so we can put it in there. This is an article that appeared in a magazine in 1955. This is out of the Collier magazine, and this is from 1955. And it's really interesting. You don't see many advertisements. I haven't seen one for the Cobra except this, and I thought that was really unique. And the little blurb down here at the bottom talks about the Cadillac powered, and how fast it goes. And but this was Collier's magazine, 1955. A fellow by the name of Jim Corbin sent this to me, who's also a member of our Cobra Club. So this little slide here is picture of the KBL engine. This is out of the owner's manual, and if you look at that in detail there, you can tell that that the carburetors and the air breathers, flame arresters there are actually different colors. You can see that the carburetor has what I would say aluminum color there. If you look at the wiring harness here on the engine, right there, you can see that the wires are covered there with that cover that runs up along the head there. And this is the engine that came in the Cobra. 46 of the Cobras had this engine right here. That's now, when you're judging and you see that engine, that's sort of what you look at. The alternator and starter are black, the engine's blue, and you can see the colors there. So that's just a performance chart on the engine there. I'm not going to go into that. I can talk to you all about that if you'd like to, but basically that's a 131 horse engine, and it turns 3,900 RPM. And it'll do that. It just sit there and run it all day like that. This is a picture of an engine, the KBL engine. You can see the different the colors of the carburetor, the flame arrestor, and you can see the wire and the way the spark plug wires are fed onto the spark plugs there through that cover. You can look at some of the detail here, and the choke set, the way the choke is set up on this. This is the choke lever right here. This right here, and this is where the choke rod runs up to the dash. That's actually the way it was set up, and I've seen various combinations of that. But that's how it actually is set up like that. You can see the wiring down there, the curl on the wiring. That's the way they came. Now here's another picture of another engine in another boat. This boat belongs to Randy Almiral, and this boat was pretty much an original boat. This was Joe Watonski's boat, and Joe sold this to Randy, and this is up in Michigan. I know Chris has seen this himself because I have a picture of Chris standing here looking at this boat. And you can see the chalk number there on the back of the seat. And here's a total different engine than what came in the owner's manual. You can see the different, the way the spark plugs are fed, the wiring is fed differently there to the spark plugs. You can see that the carburetors are all painted blue, and that's the way it came. The fume tube is painted blue, and on the previous picture, I'll go back there, you can see the different colors. So you get down to this, what's right and what's wrong. Well, I tell you what I've learned from going through this, and Earl's taught me this, Earl Sheehan, is that on any given day back at the plant, they painted these engines. It all depended upon who was painting and how big of a hurry they were in, but some of the engines got totally painted blue, and some of them got painted in detail. So it just varies from one to the other. This is out of the Classic Boating magazine. Thanks to the Wangards for this picture here. But it's a great photo showing the two fins and the gold. And this, George Burgess wrote a story on this gold. And when these Cobras were actually made, the gold was actually real gold. And the gold was put into the varnish and laid on. And that was a process back then. And, I've went back and I've read through that. And the reason that it was done like that is there wasn't any gold paint. I mean, gold paint hadn't even been put on a car in 1954. The first year for a gold-painted car, it was 1955, and Chevy used it for an anniversary model. So paint wasn't available to paint these golds, so Chris-Craft did it with the gold, with actually gold pigment. Cobras also had black graphite on the bottom, and they had gold bottom paint. They were the only boat that had a gold bottom paint. So if you see a Cobra with a bronze-colored bottom on it, it's only because somebody couldn't find gold bottom paint. But this is the color, and we have a code for this paint color now. We actually have a DuPont color code. So anybody that wants to paint their Cobra fin now, we can give them the color, and that's the way we're trying to standardize all this stuff. This is taken a couple years ago right here at the Mariners Museum. I put this in there for a reason. That's for those of you that have been back in the research library, and she wouldn't come out here, but that's Katie and Charlotte, who have done probably as much for our hobby as anybody behind the scenes, answering the phones, going through the hull cards, pulling up all this information and providing it to you. And I got them to, this is out here at Lake Murray. This was actually, when I finished the restoration on mine, this was the launch for it, and they came down for it, and we took a picture of them in it. So I put that in there just to recognize them for all their work. But I tell you, and I know you all really appreciate them, but you just can't imagine the job they do back there all you have to do is stand there on a given day, and I come over here a lot. That phone never, ever, ever stops ringing. And I mean, they get some of the most unbelievable questions. You just can't imagine some of the data that they pick up. So this is a picture up at Clayton, at the boat show at Clayton last summer. And the only reason I show that is because that's Chris in there, and we're glad to have him here. We appreciate you being here. And Chris had never ridden in a Cobra. So I took him for a ride up there at Clayton, and we just had a great time. And somebody recognized him being there and wanted to take him for a ride in another boat, so he got in a 38-foot Hacker, and the guy that was driving the Hacker asked me to take some pictures that he wanted to use them for an advertisement there for the boat. So we went out in the water, and I took about a roll of film of this Hacker going back and forth with this guy driving it. Don was driving it for the Hacker people, and he was having these pictures made, and so I took them all, and they turned out great. And now they use those to advertise the Hacker, and he didn't tell his boss, who was sitting in the right seat of the boat, till after they'd had the advertisements made. And one day he asked him, he said, "Who is that?" And he said, "Well, that's Chris Smith." So yeah. That's really, that's just, I mean, that's how these things happen. And so Joe Cabot and I were out there with Chris, and all this was happening, we were laughing about it. So we got all done, we got together out in the water, and Don says, "Jump in here, Terry, and I'll take you for a ride." And this boat was a 38-foot Hacker with two big 454s in it. It was a stunning boat. So I got in there, and Chris says, "I'll drive your Cobra." Chris had never even ridden in a Cobra, let alone drive one, and you know how dear that boat is to me. I thought, well, geez, I can't give it to anybody any better. So Chris jumped in and drove that boat, and he actually drove that boat probably better than me. And I drive it all the time, and I was amazed. He took that thing in and brought it in a little narrow spot, and worked the transmission just right. So I tell you, he's a great stern man there. He can run that boat. This is I just wanted to show the interior here, because that's actually how it came. The black alligator is proportioned to the bottom there. That's all specced out on the plans, and that's what the dash looks like, and the crash pad and the white floor. But it's just a photo to show detail. That's all that is. This is some of the boats I've run across. I've actually, since I've been in, doing the research, I've managed to find a lot of boats, and I take my camera and I take a lot of pictures of them, and you just can't imagine how kludged up some of these boats get. You can see the throttle there on the side, the gold metal flake upholstery, and the carpet, and just the way that it's been modified. But I study these pictures because there are some originality in these, and you can see where the buttons are. These switches right there tell that any sort of auxiliary equipment, that's where the switches would go, and they're all different. All these boats are different. They're not. I haven't found any of them that are the same, but that's where they put some of the switches and so forth. This is another boat that I found. I found this in San Diego. This was in a yacht harbor in San Diego. And I had somebody chasing this for me, trying to find the guy that owned it. This is hull number 39, and I still don't know who owns it, but you can see that the shifting rod and the throttle over there together, that's a real combination. This boat had a V8 engine in it, and you can just see how it's all been changed there. Different steering wheel, different dash, padded up here on where the padded area here, but it's just all, you can find them in various conditions. This is this boat here belongs to Howard Tubbs, and Don Leone, who's in the audience here, used to own this boat, and I just showed him a story that I got here, and I'll bring this to lunch today. But this boat actually turned over about 57. The boat went back to Chris-Craft, and Chris-Craft installed a cavitation plate on it. Right here. That's actually a factory installed Chris-Craft cavitation plate. This is hull number 50, and they put it on there to keep the boat from flipping over. But I got the story here of it, and I've heard stories about them flipping over, and I've talked to people, but usually when they were flipped in very rough water, and you can get them going really fast, and they'll get out of the water, and if they're flying through the air, and you turn the darn thing, it's going to dig it in, and it'll actually flip it over. So. But Chris-Craft tried to solve that by putting a cavitation plate on it. So I just show you that, just to show you that This is a picture that I took a long time ago of an engine that was removed from a boat, so I could use it to authenticate, because there's been some controversy on where the battery went and where the toolbox went and how that all fit together. So I use this to try to show people that, and actually you're looking at the bow is on the right there, of course stern would be to the left, and that's be on the port side of the boat is where the battery goes in an 18-foot Cobra. So that's how I use this here to authenticate. This is a Cobra that was found. This is hull number 41. This belongs to Gary Selvig. This is out in South Dakota. And I showed you on the slide that one boat went to South Dakota, and this is it, and that was the hull number. And he found this boat sitting in this field just like this. And, I mean, it's got trees growing up through it, and but it's a basket case, but, it's there, and it's got the numbers on it. And, I mean, if you're looking for one, I mean, it's a start. So. Now, he's actually going to bring this to our 40th reunion in Cadillac this summer. I'll talk about that a little bit more here. This is the MBL engine. This is a very famous engine. This was in the racing runabout all the way from 47 on up to 54. I just took out of the manual here just to show you what it was. And then this is the same engine that's out there at Rogers Boat, and this is the same engine that went into the 21-foot models, this 158 here. That's just the specs on it there. I won't bore you with that. It just shows the performance on it. And I can, of course, show you that if you like. This is a 21-foot model here with the MBL engine in it. You can see the difference in the color of the engine. This is a little bit more of a like a Chrysler color, not the Chris-Craft blue. But if you look at this, you can see when you take the hatch covers and the fin off of this boat really looks bad. And I mean, it's not till it's all together and everything's on it that it gets that really unique look. But that's what it looks like without the fin on it. That fin just snaps on the back, snaps right off there. You can take it off in about 2 minutes. Same boat sitting on a trailer with the original cradle. That's what a Chris-Craft cradle looked like that the boats were shipped on. If you ever want to know what one looked like, there's one right there. So this is another project boat. This is a 21-foot model. This boat belongs to, it's number 42. It belongs to Roger Steinecke, and Joe Cabot's working on this boat right now, but this is a mess also. But it's got potential. It's a Cadillac-powered boat, so it ranks up there as one of the hard ones to find. This is a 21-footer that sunk. That's a crime to see that sitting there like that, but this belonged to Bob Kreisner, and Joe actually gave me this photo, Joe Cabot. Joe knew Bob, and they were running this thing, and she came back and sprung a leak and went down, and you can see they got it anchored off there on some beams and ropes, trying to hold it up, but when that happens, it's not as bad as it looks. You can get them back up and get the water out of them. And this is a photo of a Cadillac engine, and it's real poor. I don't have a better photo than that. Gary's got one. I just didn't get it from him in time to get it into pitch here, but you can see the 2 4-barrels on it, and you can see the vertical starter on it. That's what's unique about this engine right here, this vertical starter. That's how you can determine, pretty much originality by looking at it there, but this is a patch that we've had made for people that are going to Cadillac, and I'd like to talk about that. Now, we have the 40th anniversary coming up of the Cobra, and we're trying to rally all the people who have Cobras to have them bring their boat to Cadillac in June of this year. And it's going to be in conjunction with a city celebration up there, and it's going to be a real festive event, and they've sort of opened the town up to all of us. They give us the Wynn Resort there right on Cadillac Lake. That's where we're all going to stay. They want to put the boats in the water, and they're really trying to do everything possible to encourage us to go there. So We had a meeting last week down in Mount Dora and kind of laid out some of the preliminaries for it. And we're going to go ahead and try to do what we're going to call a certification program to start certifying these boats, because as these boats get older and the popularity increases, we feel like there's people out there that are trying to duplicate the boats and try to, find a hull number that's not in existence and then build a boat and then put that number on it. So we're trying to protect the boats from that sort of thing happening. So we've kicked off a Cobra Club. We've done a lot of work, and we're going to try to have this get-together up in Cadillac. So if you live close there or you know somebody that's got a Cobra, we'd certainly like to try to get them to bring it up there. This is really concludes what I would like to tell you. I have a whole litany of slides that I can go beyond here. I just want to show you that I can. I've got the data on every boat just like this. This is the 18-foot models with the KLC engines in them. And what I did is I broke them down by engines, and I've showed the hull number, the engine number, the date it was shipped, and where it was shipped to. So I can tell you where every one of the boats went by hull number. So that happens to be the 18-foot models with the KLC engines in them. There was only 6. So that's all 6 of them right there. Bob Davis, who lives up in Algonac, has one of these. I forgot right off the top which one it is, but I know he has one. And Pete Bailey, who lives up in Canada, has that number 20 there. And I know Pete's planning to come to Cadillac. So I'm not going to go through all these because it's sort of boring, unless you're particularly interested in it. But there's where the 18-foot models KBL went to. And I told you that the prototypes were built in Algonac, and Tony Dugan signed every hull card except the 2 prototypes, and Elton Jacobs signed the hull cards on the prototypes. So I've got that information. I'm just not going to go through that. That's sort of boring unless you're particularly interested in something. So I'd like to go ahead and close out here, entertain any questions you may have, anything you'd like to ask me at this time. I'm a little early, but I know we'll compensate here. Would you turn the lights on, please? Any questions you'd like to ask? Yes, sir.
How did you restore your engine tag, the actual engine plate itself that has the serial number on there? Did you restore that yourself, or how did you do that?
Yes, those tags are available. You can actually buy a new tag and then have your number put on there.
Mm-hmm. You have the correct guys.
Yes. Yeah, there are people in the business out there that are all networked into the restoration business that have that capability. Yes. Okay. All right. All right. Yes. The question was asked is, what about that tag that was on the exhaust manifold on the engine? Did I restore that? And the answer was that those are available. That's all part of this business out there of manufacturing parts and being able to do that. So those plates are available. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are the prototypes still available? Are they still being used and discovered? 2 prototypes?
The question is, are the prototypes available? Are they out there? And the answer is, have not found either one of them. Totally unaccounted for. Don't know where they went. I know where they were shipped to, but I've never been able to get a tally on them or know where they went. Just totally unaccounted for. Yes, sir.
You showed that one photo that didn't have a goal, and what's the story on that?
Say again, please.
You showed the one photo where the boat did not, where the pen was not painted gold.
It was white.
No, it was, looks like a mahogany color, but it's fiberglass.
Which one are you talking about? I don't know which one you meant. Oh, yes. That was a boat that's really in bad shape, and the fin is just setting way down inside the boat. That's why it looked like that. But it was a gold painted fin.
The one I referred to, it wasn't, the boat was totally restored. It wasn't bad.
The one that flipped, I think. Howard Tubbs boat.
Oh, the Howard Tubbs boat. Okay, yes, all right. The boat that I showed you there that I said was Howard Tubbs that had the cavitation plate on it, that was right after this incident, and then Howard Tubbs actually came along and bought the boat, took it back to New York and restored it, and that's now has a gold fin on it. But that's what I was trying to show you, that is how people change them through the years. And that's what that was. That was a white painted fin on there. Oh. All right. Well, I have a copy of all the slides here, and I'll show you later then. All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And
Thanks for listening. Copyright 1995 by the Antique Boat Museum and the Antique and Classic Boat Society. Audio copyright 2019 Freedom Boat Service, LLC.